YouTube's telling me I'm live, so hopefully I am. Yeah, so before I get started, thanks for being here. And all right, I'd like to ask everybody to give me a thumbs up if the video and audio are okay. That way I know if something's going on, or similarly, just kind of let me know in the chat. As usual, I'll try and keep an eye on it. If I'm quiet or anything like that, just let me know, and I'll try to adjust it as well as I can, basically. Cool. All right, so as the thumbnail suggests, I'm gonna break down two things. I'm gonna try and break down two things at least. And I'll start with showing you the final end result of each one, and then we can get that out of the way, and I know if the stream is working or if it's not working. So I'm gonna start with the DAC-FRA 18 titles this year. So let those play real quick. There's no sound, unfortunately, but that's not that big an issue. For these, I'll be able to talk about all the 3D stuff. The letters, unfortunately, I didn't do. I worked with my brother on this one, so all credit goes to him for the awesome letter animations. And he did those separately in After Effects, so we're not going to talk about those. I'm mostly going to talk about the 3D and sort of look at it. A bit about the progress first, and I was thinking afterwards I could just go through the shots, and if there's anything in particular that might have been interesting to do, or if you have any questions, then I'll go over them. And for the Suzanne Awards, I'll just kind of be looking at the technique that I used and how I cashed out the animation and stuff to make my life a little bit easier. So these are almost done. This is actually my favorite shot out of the whole thing. This is really cool. All right, almost there. Bam. All right, cool. So all the 3D is done in Blender, as I'd mentioned before, and there's some interesting stuff that that happened with those. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run through this first real quick. So I kept a number of different versions as we're working, sort of, you can see the different dates. We started in the beginning of October somewhere, and we worked our way through October. Kind of whenever we had time to do stuff, and it's fun to see how this progresses. So we at the very first outset, I don't know if we did that before. Well, I'll start here. Basically, my brother Robin came up with an idea of what we wanted to do. The idea of the triangular panels and then stuff lighting up and coming out, and sort of what you see. But it's cool to see all the different iterations of how we got there. Okay, my stream preview is all broken, so I hope it's working. Okay, that seems right. Sorry. Somebody asked, can we watch the stream back? Yes, you can. Sorry for losing my train of thought there. My stream preview was off, and I thought it was something wrong with it. All right, so basically what we did is, with the outset of the idea, we both put some stuff together. And I'll show you each one. So mine is just a viewport render. It's very basic. And there's some depth of field working here that's not really doing anything, so I'm going to skip through it a little bit. And these were just some test shots. So I'd modeled this thing before because Robin had mentioned it before, and I was just trying stuff out. And we kind of went into the whole panel thing after a little while. I'll see if I can find a different image, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Sort of what we had in the very beginning. So you can already see some of the ideas that are in the final thing in here. And I think that's always really interesting to see, like, where it starts and then where it ends. So let's see, this is incredibly slow, blah blah blah, boring. And then some other shots. I think here it sort of loosens and comes up, but it wasn't very clear. But that was sort of my first attempt once we had an idea for the panels and things, how to do things. And now this is Robin's thing. Now he did this in After Effects, so it's slightly different. And here you can see why it's really cool to work together on things, because like this idea of the big intro shot was originally his. The way you approached it, I really liked it, and we ended up going with it. And you can see there's still stuff flipped around, and we're just trying things. And if you look at the two sort of I guess different ideas next to each other, you can see how the final thing kind of worked out together. So that was fun. And it was fun to see his take on the same thing. And then we got together and we basically kind of went from there to see what we wanted to do. So a lot of the really interesting shots I think came from his ideas as well. So I obviously, you know, I don't want to take all the credit on everything. Credit where credit is due. He had some really great ideas about how to do things, especially with the lights and the entire sequence. So you can see his stuff, while it's done in After Effects, it's still, you know, it's quite engaging already, which I kind of liked. So there we go. Those titles and something initially that we wanted to do. Now, before I move on, I'm just going to show you really quickly. I don't know why I did that. Okay, anyway, never mind. His website, and if you want to know more about the text, here you can see some of his design process as well. So he also established the color palette that we ended up using, and it was kind of cool to see him progressing on his thing while I was working on my thing. It was definitely a lot of fun. We've worked together before, but not as much, not all that much yet. Every now and then we work on something, but this is definitely one of the bigger things we've done together now, and it was really cool doing stuff like that. So you can see he's very good at just design in general, and especially fonts and things like that. I think he really nails it. So it was cool to be able to hand that off to somebody else and stare at it. So if you like his stuff, check it out. His website is just robinsonave.com. So you can see his short film on things is there. He's my brother. I love his stuff. Obviously I'm biased, but I think it's all pretty rad. So check it out for sure. There we go. So let's go through this stuff. All right, so this is, I think, let me see if I can find something else real quick first. Where are we? Is it in 3D? Maybe in old style frames. Is it this one? All right, so this is a very, 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 very early version of the concept. I think, I can't remember if we did this before or after we came up with the idea of the panels on the wall. I think it was before, when we were still changing stuff. So here you can already see like the idea of the different panels in there. Now, this is a very rough render. Obviously it's just a style frame. It's not meant to be anything final, but the mood definitely changed a little bit. I ended up trying different things like these. I think this one was a little bit extreme, but it gives you a closer idea of the final look. And then trying these, I was just trying to figure out like interesting lighting situations, what we could do. And this one I really like. It's, see if I can set this to 1:1. No, it's not that big, but I really like the lighting here, and I like the way it cascades. And I can't remember, I think this was Cycles as well. I tried some stuff in Eevee, but it wasn't really ready yet at that point, so I figured I'm just gonna stick with Blender Stable and just go for a Cycles thing. So once we had some of these figured out, like these looks, and again, this is a really early one, but it's kind of cool to see, I guess. We're able to sort of start working in 3D a little bit, and obviously I'd done some of the panels before, so we had some idea of what we were gonna do. But let me get to the output again. So then what we did was this very first version. Okay, I don't know why that's freaking out. There we go. And this, we just repeated the same name every single time just to get an idea of text and how long it should be there and how readable it is. And you can see here we've just edited together our two versions just to try and get a story out of it. So we basically took the best bits of all the different versions that we liked and then edited them together. Now this is super rough, and it's not really supposed to make all that much sense in the broad scheme of things, I guess. But it's really good to start feeling timing and start trying shots and moods and all that kind of thing. So this is definitely one of my favorite shots as well. It's really cool. I like the idea of going up really close. So yeah, I'm just gonna let it play for a bit. So this first bit, it's gonna be a lot of videos and process, but then at least you get to see like how we build this up from scratch. And this is just retimed and scaled and things like that. So generally I don't really, you know, care all that much about how the image looks. I'll just retime stuff, and even if it's a little jerky or weird or whatever, it's fine. It's just to give you a really rough idea of where things are going. Like I just time skip that one, and then we end up with the thing. So here you can see that the idea, this is where we figured out like, okay, our idea is set. So then what I do is I just make one simple scene, one base scene, and I try to pull as many little effects from there as possible, and I just render everything. Just gonna pause it for a sec, and I just render everything at like 4 or 8 samples, and with denoising, so we can get just a very, very quick idea of the rendered version of things. And you can see the start was still a little bit different. So we're gonna have multiple shots, maybe an extra shot in between that one and this one. And it wasn't like the big sweeping intro shot that it is now. So these are just very, very early. And you can see even with like such low samples and denoising, yeah, sure, it looks terrible, but you can get an idea of the mood and the rendering. And our original idea was to keep it very sort of black and white and use the colors as highlights rather than going all out on the colors as we did. So it's something that evolved as well, and I'll show you when the tipping point of that happened too. So you can see, yeah, goes open, goes back in, and we're still jumbling stuff around, but it's cool. Even this stuff was already kind of modeled very quickly, and you get to the end. So I'm gonna go through these a little bit quicker. So this is a bit more than a week later. I tried to render some of the shots as well. Sometimes I'll use metadata just to keep an eye on things, and here it's already a little bit more finished. And you can see now we have the individual dots, and then while I really like this shot, this next one here, this is, I really didn't feel it. I didn't like it as much. Obviously there was still stuff missing, and I'd started experimenting with these colors and to just kind of see what happens. And I got really, really lucky on this one, because basically what had happened in between that first week and now is I had started rendering out some shots that were final, and I was getting really high render times, and we did this at 2560 by 1080 because we wanted to go a little bit bigger, just to get it sharper and make it look good. And I was having issues where it's taking really long to render and things, so I was looking into ways of optimizing things. And you can see here is the colorizing already going on. So basically what had happened is, if I open up one of these compositing files, actually I'm gonna go back and add a new tab, comp, I don't know which one it is, let's see if 8 works. Give it a second, there we go. So what I had started doing is I was rendering stuff out, and I started looking at the denoiser. So I turned on denoising. So obviously it's not on here because we're in the comp files. But turning on denoising, what I didn't realize before is when you do, you get a whole bunch of extra passes. All these denoising passes that are really, really interesting. So I ended up just kind of looking at the different ones. So this one's really cool. This one's also really interesting. And this is the original image. And these are they're all different things. Like even these ones are really, really cool and give you all these lines and interesting things. And it's just like the delineation of the normals and things, I think. I don't know exactly what it is, but hey, I got this idea of like, why don't we just build up some extra layers of color from the denoising passes. So as you can see that in that colorized test, this shot, we hit this shot, and what I ended up doing is basically this was our reference shot. Once we saw this in between all the different other ones, so I'll see if I can show that again. I think it was this one. So these were all still black and white, and I had started experimenting with these colors, and none of them are that great, and there's like scan lines and stuff in there that weren't all that great. So let's see. Come on, it's down here. So when we reviewed everything and we collectively saw this shot, we both immediately agreed, like, okay, this is it. This is our reference shot. This is our look. This is how we want everything to kind of look like, and go from there. Somebody's asking how I animated the light pattern. I'll get to that once I review the 3D files. No worries. So once we had that, we knew, all right, I need to figure out a way to get the same look from all the different ones and figure out what different passes they used. So let's see if I can go step for step to show you a little bit of the compositing, and then I'll go into the 3D stuff as well. Because once you've got something like this set up, honestly, you can reuse it for the same ones and just tweak it when you need it. But it's really good to just experiment until you get one of the shots looking exactly the way you want it. It just jumps out to you, and then you can kind of go from there and try and figure out your style. It's fun. It's working backwards a little bit, but it's interesting. So first thing I'm doing is, so let's see, this is what comes out of the renderer. First thing I'm doing is just combining it with multiple, let's see if that even gets used. There we go. Just combining it with like a mist pass and things, just to give it a little bit of depth. Let me turn off the use alpha here real quick so we can just see what's going on. And then it's a case of just layering stuff. So all this stuff up here, actually, this top stuff, all of this was useless, because basically what it was doing, or mostly useless, it was adding in like extra layers of things. So let's see if we go in here, like scan lines and extra like glitchy stuff. And we decided the glitchy thing didn't really quite fit. So I hope I did the right ones now. Anyway, it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, that one's in there. Let me just reload it real quick. There we go. And go through all the steps. So then what we started to get was these really interesting color shifts because of those denoising passes. So it was really cool. So somebody's asking, are those denoising nodes causing the subtle light variation? Yeah. So that was the fun part. Once you can start adding these in, you can really recolor the whole thing. And obviously, they're not really meant to do this kind of thing, but who cares? It doesn't really matter. A tool's a tool. So it was fun to get a look from something completely different. So let's see what happens here. All right, so this is just the, I thought I turned off the alpha. There we go. So this is just the raw image. Then I'm adding in some glare separately, adding in a vignette, and a quite heavy one even, but sometimes if you really blur out the vignette, this kind of style can really benefit from it. Then they're very subtle sunbeams, I guess they're called. So they just beam up a little bit and I'll get a more interesting shot with some of the lights still on. Then where are we? It's just a case of color correcting things a little bit. So all of these are just little tweaks to bring out the final image a little bit more, and obviously it's super subjective. So then I'm adding in, here I'm adding in the text. So we debated a little while about how we were going to do things, whether my brother was going to do the final comping in After Effects or whether I was going to do it and bring his text in. We ended up going for him doing the text separately and me bringing it in, because that way all of the lens distortion and grain and sort of defocusing effects would be applied to the text as well, and would make it, I don't know, make it, I guess, look the same. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like if you try and match the text to the fully comped image at the end, it can tend to look a little bit off every now and then. So if you comp the text in with it, it gets the same, like a weird bowing and other things. So you'll see, for example, I use a lot of lens distortion as well. I use it quite heavily even, because I wanted to simulate the idea of these sort of very analog film-like lenses that bow out a lot, and the depth of field is sort of pushed out as well in the vertical space, which is really nice. So then add more stuff in. Yep. Oh, this is just adding a layer of grain. So if you zoom in, see if I can find a spot that, there we go, like this black bit. So this is without the grain, and this is with the grain. Now, what grain does is it just blends everything together really nicely, especially if you want to post stuff on YouTube and other places. You get a lot of like color banding in your gradients, and if you want to avoid that, adding in just a little bit of grain can really do wonders. So let me bring this back down, zoom out a little bit. Ooh. There we go. And then finally, I use the soften. It's called a filter, and I set it to soften. And actually, I shouldn't have zoomed out. That was stupid. What that does is it sort of takes the edge off a little bit. I don't know how visible it will be on YouTube, but yeah, it just softens everything up just a little bit, and yeah, it just makes things look less CG. And I really wanted this to feel like a very almost analog looking thing. So. Let's just a quick trip through the compositing. The reason I chose this shot to show you is because this is where it all came together. And if we go back to the MP4s now, you'll see that like this is a second colorization test. I'm just gonna buzz through them because I don't really, yeah. So this one got color as well. There's still the scan lines and other things in it. And we're getting there. I'm just gonna keep running through them. And at this point, I said to my brother, like, I like what we have, but I'm not happy with the opening shot. I want something a bit more, just a bit more interesting. And then I started animating this basically. And this is a very first pass. Again, low samples just to see if it works. It wasn't as easy to animate as I thought it would be because you're making a lot of different moves, but it ended up being quite nice. I'm quite happy with it. So it was pretty interesting. So let's see, yeah, this one was starting to come together, but as you can see, they all still look very different from the final image. Again, that was because, you know, we had this one and I was still working towards trying to get them all done. So this is from a few days later, and yeah, I just rendered the whole thing. I was like, screw it, let's go for it. Here's where you can see, I'm just gonna skip through it. You can see all the colors are starting to look more like the final image, just tweaking things, taking things out. This one hasn't, yeah, this one it says to do. So you'll see sometimes I'll send these off to my brother and I'll just put in to do on the shots and stuff. So let's see some questions. Yeah, the light pattern, don't worry, I'll get to it. So it's not animation nodes, I can spoil that already. You never use something in Blender what it's meant to be used for. Yeah, well, I don't know, I see meant to be used, what's meant to be used, like everything's a tool, so if it looks cool, it looks cool. I think I've said this so many times on streams and other things, like the hardest part is not giving a crap, you know, just trying to find cool stuff. This was separate. Oh yeah, we had a first pass of some oops. Some text that we've been trying, and here the text was still monochromatic, as in it was just using one I'm gonna say just one color for all the text, and we're just sending this off to each other, trying to figure out what to do, trying to figure out if things are readable, things like that. So yeah, you can see it coming closer together, and it just gets incrementally closer to everything. Here a lot more stuff has been rendered. Here I redid this part as well, and I put a little Easter egg in this shot. If you look very closely, you can see they're like triangles and stuff. It's actually the original texture from the titles last year, which I scaled down significantly and put in there as like a roughness map as a bit of an Easter egg to kind of link it to the previous one. gotta have fun with this stuff, you know, because after a while you're looking at it for a long time and you just, it's not like you're getting sick of it, but you just want to kind of, I don't know, just get through it at some point. It's sort of the reality of production, I guess. So this still had to do. This was in a different color. I think this is one of the last previews. Yeah, you can see, I told my brother I really like the idea of having the text in different different colors, and he got to work on reanimating a lot of stuff and recoloring all of stuff. And unfortunately, some of the things that you don't see, especially with YouTube compression, is that we talked a lot about those letters and how they're like it's like old school optical compositing. When you look at older movies and you see text, it sort of wiggles around a bit because it used the lens and it's shown on the original film to project it and then superimpose it over, so you always get like a little bit of a movement. And it's all in there, but yeah, stuff you don't really see when you post it online, which is unfortunate. So at this point, we're pretty much there. We're just tweaking some things, and this is also towards what it's supposed to be like. And what you can't hear is this was all done with a preliminary sort of version of the music. So, all right, so let's get to the 3D. I won't. And actually I'll put the output here and I'll run through the shots and see if there's anything particularly interesting about these as we go along. So for the first shot, let's see, I'll open that up, which is shot 12 incidentally. All right, so yes, good old 2.79. This wasn't done in 2.8 yet. I think if I would have had to do it now, I might have switched over, but for now, this is 2.79. So I'm gonna turn off only render. So we had a couple of things going on here. There's a particle system in there, but I don't know if you can actually see it at this point. So the way I approached the shot, why are those controls different? I don't know. Anywho. It's basically I animated all the how should I say this? The different moves separately. So I'm not a very good animator. I definitely have a lot to learn still. But the one thing I can tell you is that there's merit to splitting up all the different parts of your shot, especially if you're doing a long shot like this, and trying to figure out what the different components are. So I animated just going forward first, then going forward and flipping it, and then kind of going from there. I animated a very quick last pose at the very end, and then started kind of tweaking the curves to make sure it was like a nice, I guess, sweeping movement. There's no real secret to this other than you have to just keep tweaking the curves. I know that sounds like horrible advice, but honestly, it's the way I've learned how to animate as a non-animator. So here you can see the different curves, and it's just a case of scaling these up and down and seeing where they're going. And another thing is, because this camera really only moves on the Y and the Z axis and only rotates on the X and the Z axis, always single keyframes and single channels. Because if you're like, let's say the camera only moves in the Y-axis, only moves forward, for example, then if you're having 3 keys for every single one of those actions and 2 of them are dummy keys every time, everything's going to get cluttered up and it's incredibly annoying. I'm just going to link my brother's site. There you go. That should work. Let me just double check. Somebody was asking for it. There we go. So yeah, just split it up. It'll make your life a lot easier than trying to do everything all at once. Sounds basic, but hey, that's what it is. I mean, there was not, other than that, there wasn't really a huge challenge to this shot. I'll mention it now so I don't have to mention it again. All of these where you see like the little cross sticking out, they're not actually objects. They're group instances, or in 2.8, you should say collection instance, I guess. So I only modeled this thing once and then added it into a group. Wow, getting used to the 2.8 UI already. So this added into 2 groups. One is with the panel lights on, and one is with the panel lights off. And if you'll see, there's multiple objects here. So this is just sub-D modeling and not even that great at that. So I got away with a lot on this one. So let's see, I'm gonna turn off the main one. So these are very basic, like there's nothing really crazy to them. But because I had modeled this just once and I have lights that are on and lights that are off, I can propagate changes really, really quickly because they're using the same back and front panels. They're using the same little grid here in the middle. So if I change that, then it changes over all the different, okay. Yeah, sorry to interrupt that, but my brother just popped up in the chat, Robin. So you can ask him questions about the text as well while I'm doing my explanation. So there we go. So that makes it easy. And those group instances, they're basically, yeah, they're true instances. So you can see if I turn this main one off, it's turned off in all of them. But it allows, the reason I use it like this is, one, if you use those for rendering, especially in cycles, let's see if I render really quick. If you look at the memory usage for a scene like this, even though there's a lot of images, there's only 227 megabytes being used and about 600 at a peak. So there's very, very little memory usage, and yeah, it's on the mist layer here, which is why we can't see anything rendering. But it's very little memory, so that means it starts to render really quickly, and you can really push crazy amounts of instances on the GPU, even with a GPU with very little memory. So collection or group instances in 2.7, collection instances in 2.8, extremely powerful tool if you want to get some stuff done. So with that said, let's move on. I'm really scared to like hit save. Let's see. So skip to that. All right, and maybe I'll talk, because it's in the same things, I'll talk about the lights very quickly. So I'm gonna start a new scene to set them up, just to get an idea, to show you how it works. And I'm gonna make sure my display GPU is off. There we go. So we're not gonna get too much stuttering. Let's see. Let's just do cubes. Cubes are awesome. Nope. Edit mode, duplicate it. I'm just going to set up a little grid. There we go. And imagine these are the lights, and I'll show you really quickly. Let's see. So light pattern, yes. So how much detail did I add in the light sockets? Yeah, I already showed that. What's that OS? I'm using Ubuntu with my own custom theme, which you can find on GitHub. Let's see. Am I in there? No. It's in the description as well, normally my GitHub page, but it's this theme here. So it's Linux, Ubuntu, so XFCE Ubuntu, and with my own kind of theme that I built in here. I like making stuff look the same, but it's obviously a very subjective and nerdy thing. Then might have gone through the mesh already, but but all the lights individual objects, are they modifier based? So it's just one mesh, and I'll show you how to light them now. Any reason why I don't use animation nodes? Because I can set this up a lot quicker than animation nodes, basically. Animation nodes super powerful, but I don't know it well enough to do things quickly. I'll use it when I need it, but if I know of an easy way of doing it like that, that's basically what I'll do and why I don't use it, because I can do it quicker, a different way. So somebody asked me, do my brother storyboard the whole idea? Is it on the fly or some other way? It's a little bit of both. Yeah, you can rewatch the start of the stream later. Let's see. What was I going to say? Basically, we come up with the basic idea and we describe it, and then we kind of go off and both try ideas and then mash them together, which is really fun. But I go through the process a little bit at the start of the stream, so I would suggest to kind of go back and look at it real quick. How do I like using Blender for compositing? I like it. It's a little bit on the slow side. It's no secret that it's not the fastest compositor, but it's got pretty much everything I need to get a decent comp out. I like the workflow of rendering, especially for personal work, being able to just render and composite all in one step and then save the final image. For this one, I ended up saving it to multi-layer EXRs for all the denoising passes, so I could comp them in later. Because when you're working on a bigger project, really depends on the project. If it's really quick to render, I'll render the final frames and comp it all at once. But yeah, we'll see. So, but it's good. I like it. It's a good compositor. So I think we're getting there. Am I tweaking the default render settings to get all those reflections, bounces? If you look at my YouTube channel, there's a weird shit episode called Ravenous Rendering. And if you go through that, I explain what my render settings are like, why I change them, and things like that. I'm not going to go into it here. So, all right, the lights. Let's get down to business. So first of all, what I do is you got to UV these bad boys, because I'm going to use the texture and cycles to do this. And let's do even more just to have fun with it, so you can get an idea of the scale. There we go, and something like that maybe. Just want to put these in the middle. There we go. And I'm just gonna go project from view, bounds on the U menu. I'll see if I can screencast the keys. Wow, I really wasn't that prepared. It's been a while. Screencast, start display. Okay, cool. So just in case somebody was wondering, hit the U for the unwrap, and then you get this. Now, I'll go into the shading menu really quick. And just shade these. I'm just going to do this with a emission shader. There we are. And a gradient texture. All right, so let's set this to spherical. No. And what I'm doing as well is, rather than using these coordinates, if you go into input and then, where is it? Object info, and you use the, geometry, and you use the position. Basically what you're doing is using world space coordinates, which is really nice because they start at 0, 0, 0. And as you might have noticed before, the whole thing was basically, the whole array was on a flat plane. So it's really cool because you can grow stuff really easily, and because it's in world space, you know exactly where it's going to be because it starts from the origin and works its way out. And did I mess it up? I thought it was position. Let's see. Of course, now it doesn't want to work. Very typical. Let's just use the UVs. Actually, I UV'd it, so it should be fine. The same thing applies, but there's a real cool trick with the UVs that I'd like to show, so I think that's really interesting. All right, so this goes to, is it minus 0.5? Yeah, there we go. So this is a bit of both. So what I had is I had the light texture and color on the UV space. So let's do that first. I'm going to do this with a noise, and we'll stick that into UV. So we'll do the coloring first, and then I can show you what I want to show you. So let's say, stick this in a color ramp. There we go. And the issue with this, right, is if these would be lights, then the problem is those should be individually colored. The problem with this is because they're just UV'd like that, you're going to get these weird things. But the cool thing is, if we go back into edit mode, and you'll see this happen. So I'm going to leave the render on while we're editing the UVs. if you go down here and set this to individual origins and scale them to 0, the UV become an infinitely small point of that texture. And what you'll see happening is exactly what I need, is now because it's a single point, it just picks the color from the texture and gives it to the whole thing. So it's a great little use for lights and other things where you have individual mesh pieces that have to have full different colors within a range. You just UV them and then scale them down individually, and that works really, really well. And this is a fun little trick that you can use for all kinds of things, because you can see now the lights actually color all by themselves and you don't need any anything else. So again, UVs don't have to be perfect to be useful. You can have multiple UV channels with all these different sort of layouts and things. And I project a lot of UVs from the front or from the side, just to get anything on there very, very quickly, which I think is very interesting. So then let's see. Is it location? Maybe I messed up. Yeah, it looks like it could be. So let's duplicate this as well and see what's going on here. I always thought it was geometry, but now I'm confused. I thought it was position. That's weird. Anyway, it doesn't matter that much. I'm just spacing on it right now. We can do this in object space as well, which shouldn't be too much of an issue. I have no idea why it's acting up like this. I'm probably doing something stupid. Anyway, let's just use UVs and cheat. It's fine. But again, because you can mix this on a UV level, and get these back. 0.5, there we go. Setting these to constant, for example, now I'm able just to control the lights. Now, obviously, we don't just all want them expanding out. And I mean, depending on the shape of your gradient, you can do some interesting effects. Like this is really fun, where you can have it come in like a clock. So let's just keep it to sphere, quadratic sphere. Spherical is fine. So I still want some more randomness in these. And generally what I'll do is, again, go for let's see, a noise texture or something like that. Just preview it really quickly. And add into the color ramp. Let's see, something like that. There we go. Now we know it's a little bit offset. So what this is being used for, and you could even use it just on object scale. So let's do that just to prove the concept and that it works. There we go. Something like this. And what you can do is, if you look at this gradient now, what we want to do is offset the vector here. So basically what I'm doing, if you look at UVW coordinates as 3 colors, which they are. I mean, if you look at them, there are 3 colors. And it's really important to just kind of know that that's what's happening. So that means we can mess with those as well. So for example, if I were just to add in a vector transform, no, not a vector transform, I always mess this up, it's a converter, a vector math, and add those in, and we look at the final result. What you can see now is that the colors are sort of being offset a little bit. Now, they're being offset because I'm using the object coordinates here. If I would go to the UV ones, then we wouldn't have too much of an issue. But basically, this is a way of offsetting the coordinates, and to make it work properly, because now it's all offsetting them to one side, you have to subtract a half. And then, I know it seems kind of complicated, but once you get the hang of this kind of stuff, it makes a lot of sense. So now I can just use the multiply to define how much of an offset is happening. Maybe the subtract wasn't even needed. I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much. But that way you can get a little bit more randomness in it, and the colors will, see, they'll disperse slightly differently. So basically that's what I did. I'll open the original file really quickly because it seems like I've already kind of forgotten how things worked. Is it 8? this is the one I think. I'm just doing a preview render on the other screen real quick. Yeah. So let's just have a look at the shader. So lights on. This is compositing view. Yeah, so this is what's going on. All right, let's check it out really quick. So the first one is, I'm just looking for the, yeah, this is the whole chain here. So it's a noise texture, which has been color ramped very little. But here you can see sort of the offset, multiply it by a little bit, same I was doing before, and then now we get the gradient. Only now with the color ramp, if I were to push this in and out, you'll see, because the middle one stayed on, that didn't get animated, but let's see if I can up the performance a little bit here. Why not 420? It's always funny. Now what you can see is, yeah, it takes a little while to calculate, because I'm just animating the color ramp. Because of that offset, we get these beautiful sort of flickering lights. So it's just really simple stuff when you think about it. Obviously, if you like that kind of thing, I have to give this guy credit. I think I might have mentioned it before. I feel like I mention this video every single time. It's called Manipulate Texture Coordinates Like a Boss. It's on YouTube. Here, I'll post the link real quick so you don't have to grab it. The stuff that he does in here goes even way further than what I do. So I've simplified it a little bit just to make it easy on myself. Very much worth it. Take a look at it. It's awesome. So yeah, that's the basic idea. And there's variations of that same thing kind of going on with the colors here. So we wanted the color of each little light to be slightly different. And the reason for that, just, you know, you want a little bit of sort of analog feel in there, and it was done using a very similar technique. So there we go. Same deal really. And this thing is just animated. You can see it animate on and off. So that's that. For the first shot though, credit where credit is due. For some of the shots, they were done manually, especially the flickering on shots, and Robin animated those in After Effects. So I basically gave him a UV map, and he could animate the shots going on. So it's a combo of both. This is nice because you can have, you know, if somebody animates something by hand, it usually times a lot better than a procedural texture, but if you just want something to shrink with a bit of variation, then procedural usually works kind of fine, and depends on the amount of time, obviously. I mean, we could have hand animated the other stuff as well, but he basically did a whole bunch of different ones for different shots, sorry, that I could pick out, and I could sort of pick and mix. So this is from the second shot. So maybe I'll just run through the shots very quickly in the meantime. So there we go. And this is where those flicker on. So it's the same shader, but rather than having the complicated, the semi-complicated UV setup, it's really just an image sequence of these ones coming in, which is really nice. Then for these ones, I just did procedurally as well, because basically it's just a color ramp flying over the UV, and that's it. There we go. These, again, same technique as before. So once you have that set up, and that's usually what I'll do, is I'll have one sort of master scene where I work from a lot of the time and sort of get a lot of the basic shaders and other things down. So I build myself a little toolbox, and then I can just reuse everything that's in the scene and go from there. So these I modeled very quickly, as you can tell once you kind of look up close to them. I should have put a little bit more time in them. It's a bit of a shame, but you know, 2020 hindsight, right? At the time we were just trying to get things finished as well. There's a very subtle sort of activation light even going on, where they start, the light goes on, and then sort of the things open up and the light goes off again, but you barely see it. So I put a lot of details in this little bit here, and then not a lot in here, which is like modeling 101 of what not to do. So, you know, sometimes you make mistakes, it happens, or you forget things, and it's okay. I'm not too bothered by it. We got it finished, and in this case, it's the whole that counts a lot more. And then at the end, it was just a case of timing our music to the stuff. So, yeah. I think now would be a good time. Is there anything else? Because I was gonna go by this shot by shot, but honestly, they're all pretty much the same file and kind of go from there. So, I don't think I need to divulge or go on more. So if you have questions, ask them now. I'll read through some of the questions that have been asked, and then we can move on to the Suzanne Awards, and then we can do maybe another last round of questions after that. So, all right. So default render settings, we had that. There we go. How soon can we expect a new version of the motion graphics course, including Eevee? I think depends when I can get started. I've already gone to the Blender Institute to talk to them about it, about updating the motion graphics course to 2.8, and they're very excited about it. I am too. Now it's just a case of finding time in the schedule. Don't bet on it for this year. It'll probably be early next year. It also depends on how well 2.8 is performing during the beta. It's just a couple of things that need to come together, but should be for early-ish next year, not too late, hopefully. That'll be cool, because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to put in there, and we'll see. Maybe I can do a poll or something before of some techniques or other things that I might be able to include. So it'll be a good time, and obviously Eevee, so you know, it's fun. So then that's stuff for my brother. Am I using 2.8 as my main version now? What are the things I like and dislike about it? So it's pretty cool. I'm not using it as my main version. I'm sort of in the middle. Let me wait. Let me show you how I've got it set up at the moment. So I've learned to build Blender 2.8 from source. So I'm updating it every day and using it. I'm messing with UI stuff and trying to figure out good ways of doing things. So far, I think there's a lot of great stuff in there. The beta is going to solve a lot of still nagging issues, but I think honestly, for the most part, they're really on the right track with this release. There's some really cool stuff in there, and it's hard to argue with a lot of the things that they put in. I moaned about this stuff the other day, and now that I've used it a couple of days, I've gotten used to it. So honestly, just use it for a little while and start getting used to it a little bit, and you know, it's good. I like it. I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on. Even just for like all the improvements in cycles alone, it's worth the upgrade. But yeah, wait till the beta comes out. Don't do anything too mission critical in there. Most of my freelance work is still being done in 2.7, just because I can't afford to make files that I might not be able to open in the long run, which would suck, obviously. Then, so yes, will this be available on the channel after the stream ends? Yes, always. Thank you that you like the UV map shader trick. It's interesting, it works. You know, sometimes you just gotta keep it simple, and it works really well. So what's the software that I use to play images like animation? Yes, so there's multiple ways of doing it. In Blender, if you're working on a Blender scene, you can hit Control F11 and it'll load in its own player. Or for the flipbook player that I use, it's free and open source. It's called DJV View. So there we go. This has changed. Nice. Cool, he's updating it again. It hadn't been updated for a while, so there you go. It's a great little tool. Works awesome. It's on Mac, Windows, and Linux, I think. Yeah, good stuff. Oh, somebody had already posted it. Wow. What do I think Blender needs to catch up to Cinema 4D in MoGraph? Catching up is a weird thing to say. Every package has its strength and weaknesses. I'm glad to see the text tool improved a little bit in 2.8. I still think you could use a bit of work. Yeah, obviously some of the newer features that just got put into Cinema 4D, like the volume booleans and things, it's been around in Houdini for a while as well. This stuff is cool, but we'll see how useful it is for certain things. I think whenever new tools come out or new techniques come out, there's always a lot of hype around them. And it's cool to see what you can do with them, but for me, it's more long term, like how robust is it and things like that. So I don't know. I'm sure could be some tools added. I think obviously they're working on all the stuff in 2.8 now. I think the entire sort of dynamics engine could be revamped a little bit. Maybe soft bodies could be revamped a little bit. But all that stuff, I think, with the interactive mode is something they're looking at. So yeah, some stuff is better, some stuff isn't as good. The curves can be a little rough in Blender, but once you know how they work, you can do a lot of really amazing things with them. So I don't know. Other than that, I don't really. For me, it doesn't have to like be as good or better as Cinema 4D at certain things. I mean, I don't have to pay for Blender, so that to me is like its strongest strongest point against other stuff. Like if it's really quiet when I'm freelancing and there's not a lot of jobs coming in, I'm not paying software subscriptions. I don't have like a whole plan how to make enough money to pay for my software for the upgrade for that year, that type of thing. So actually I like this, this way of doing things a little bit better personally. But yeah, I mean, obviously things can always be improved, but the grass is always greener on the other side as well, I think. So I found the more I get into it, the better I get with Blender, the more stuff I'm able to pull off. And especially if you start getting into things like scripting, then you can do really cool things. So what did I do to get the nice colorful specular reflections? I don't know if you were here earlier, but I basically used the denoising passes. Denoising spits out a bunch of passes with all kinds of colors, and I composited them back on top of the image. Any tips on collaborating with a brother? Yes, stay calm. Make sure you communicate enough, and I don't know. It was interesting. It was fun working together, but it takes a little while to get used to each other's workflow. I'm very deep down the open source rabbit hole, and Robin, he uses After Effects all day, every day at work as well. So it was kind of interesting trying to marry those two. Not necessarily the softwares, that was easy enough because you can just export it and re-import it and all that kind of thing. But I guess the way of thinking. I'm all super open sourcey, and he isn't, which is fine. It doesn't matter. But it was cool because mostly we like a lot of the same movies and things, so it's really fun, I guess. Yeah. All right. Become paid software now. Blender doesn't need to become paid software. Greetings from Venezuela. Hello. Thank you for watching. So I watched your presentation at the Blender conference to compose the music of your rendered videos. Yes, lately in the last year or so, maybe a little bit longer, I've been doing almost all of my own music. Now for the titles, the digital art conference titles, me and Robin worked on them together. So he laid down sort of a bass track, some basic arrangements, and we kind of went from there, and we had a sit down together where we worked on it for a little bit, and then I ended up tweaking just a few bits at the end to fit everything together a little bit better. So that was collaborative as well, but for my own stuff I'm usually doing my own music as well, which is why it's, let's call it, interesting at times. So, but I like to do the whole thing. It's more fun that way, I find. So will Blender 2.8 have tools like Cinema's MoGraph? Blender already has tools like Cinema's MoGraph, but you have to think outside of the box a little bit. Things like the cloner and other things, you can do it with either particles or dupliverts. There's a lot of different ways of looking at things. It's not necessarily the same as MoGraph, but the modifier stack, and especially if you like animation nodes and you want to get into it, then between those two things you can do a lot of the stuff that Cinema can do, and it doesn't really need anything else added to it. So Robin says, it was nice working with Mage. We've tried it a few times, but this was the easiest so far. Yeah, for sure. We used to live together as well when before, a few years ago, And now that we live separately, I think it works a little bit better because we're able to take our space, do our own thing for a couple of days, and then get back together. But it's awesome. I didn't get to see the UV setup you made. Yeah, I'm not going to redo it because we already did it. But you can scroll back in the stream. You should be able to go back like, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes. I can't remember when I set it up. So, and it'll be on the channel for reference later, so no worries. Is that an array of an array? No, I just modeled it really quickly, very boringly. Don't use After Effects noise, Robin says. Yes, very much so. First we had the grain filter in After Effects, the grain effect, and it was so slow to render, and we ended up just comping it over in Blender. So then actually for the most interesting little tidbit, because I glossed over this, I've been doing the editing in Blender as well lately. So I've just gone completely down the rabbit hole and yeah, started editing in Blender as well. So just to give you an idea, it's very simple stuff. Just a black with noise, and then it all fades in, and we just time it to the music in here, basically. And that's it. So Blender's editor is actually pretty cool. I didn't realize it was as good as it is. So. Not redo it. Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna move on. So, and I'll get back to the questions a little bit later. So let's get to the Suzanne Awards, because I don't know how long we've been streaming. An hour already. Good lord. And then I can end it after that. So if more questions, I'll go through this first, and I'll answer some more questions. So let's see. For the Suzanne Awards, funny story, I got an email the Friday before the week of the Blender conference. So the Blender conference started on Thursday. I got an email from the guys down there, and they're like, we're super busy. We don't have anything for the Suzanne Awards. Are you interested in helping us out? And I said, yes, no problem. Because I didn't have too much work. So I was like, sure, I'll try it. So I sat down and I talked to Francesco over there, and he basically said, I asked him like, do you have anything for brief or anything? And he basically said, we're using this font, we have the lines, and we have the colors, and that's pretty much it. So that was funny. I was like, okay, interesting. Let's see what we can do with that. So I'm going to show you all the bad stuff now. Yeah, I tried a couple of things before I got into it. I don't know which Blender version I did them with, so I'm just gonna open them with 2.8 because I tried stuff in Eevee as well, and I think this could be really fun. So let's see if this is gonna work at all. So usually you'll see, it sounds stupid, but I have a folder system. The style frames folder is just to kind of mess around with stuff. I like messing around, and yeah. You got to do that whenever you start ideas. Don't give yourself a rigid structure, just idea, and then afterwards you can change stuff. So let's see, yeah, some Eevee stuff in here. So I figured like, hey, 2.8 is coming, maybe I could do it in Eevee. So here he's got some 2.8 stuff, and this is this is where it starts getting fun. I was trying stuff with the lines, and it was okay, but it looked a little bit too plastic. I wasn't a big fan of it. So I was messing with it a lot. Yeah, this was a funny setup. This is actually it's Suzanne. So if we turn this off, I was trying things. This is where I got the first sort of idea, like maybe I could have Suzanne fade in somewhere or something like this. So what I did was, I'll go one by one. So actually I'll turn these off. So basically I just had Suzanne, and then I put in an edge split modifier. So that splits up the edges. You can see the smoothing here. Yeah, basically splits up the edges. And if you put a smooth on that, you can sort of mess with the smooth and try things. And the cool thing is if you change the split angle, like it builds up in a really interesting way. So I was thinking, maybe I can do something with that, and then I was animating it, and it kind of didn't look that great, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I played around with it a little bit more, and I found I kind of kept this because I thought it was a funny idea. So it's interesting. The cast modifier, you can cast stuff into a certain shape. So then I started messing with making her into a little cube, but yeah, wasn't really doing much. So move on. So you can see this was all these ideas I generated in a weekend, just to kind of try things out, see what I could do. So this one's probably more interesting. This is cycles even, so I hope this doesn't crash too much. I think I did this in 2.7, so we'll see if it actually works. So yeah, I had some line stuff going on here, but it wasn't necessarily. I didn't like it. I wasn't into it. I tried a couple of versions of it. Oop, there we go. So that doesn't even open anymore. So that's what I mean by being careful with 2.8. Like that file just, nah, it opens now. Some files just straight up don't open anymore. So alpha software, you know, and all that good stuff. Come on. And now it's crashing. So I did a bad thing. No, looks like I'm just gonna have to kill it. Or, it popped up. There's a lot going on here. Yeah, there was versions of this. So this is the Eevee version. So I was trying things in Eevee, and I don't know, it didn't really work. It didn't have a lot of, I wasn't feeling it. Let me put it that way. It was interesting, but it wasn't as, it didn't feel like something special. So, oh crap, should have left Blender open. So that was number 4, 5. And here it started getting interesting. So this is when I started trying stuff, I guess, yeah, with the particle simulations. So first I did a simulation, and then I ended up like meshing it as you do before. So you can turn it to particle paths and then mesh it. And I was looking at doing something with this. I don't know if anything's gonna open here. Let's see. Oh, no, open. That was 5. Is this 6? Yeah, just trying different things, seeing if it worked out. How can I make Suzanne sort of not look like Suzanne and look like Suzanne, that kind of thing. But I was still at this point just kind of banging my head against the wall trying to figure something out. I went completely weird with it as well. I don't know, this doesn't really do anything. I was looking at like this kind of thing, went back to the lines because I was like, they asked for lines, And then after a while, this isn't going to work because I need to open this in 2.7. So it was all, eventually it was all done in 2.7 and rendered in cycles, so no Eevee. But where are we? Not titles, project, Suzanne Awards, style frames, and this is the master scene. So then basically what I did after that weekend, or towards the end of the weekend, I kind of went, okay, not feeling it. I had 3 instructions, which were also already very limited. I'm going to keep 2, and I'm going to throw 1 out. And the one that was causing me the most trouble was the lines, basically. So I was like, screw the lines. I'm not gonna bother with those. I'm going to keep the 3 colors, the white, blue, and orange, and I'm going to keep the font. And then I can use it however I want to use it. So this is basically the simulation for that, yeah, for the whole thing. So I'm just going to free the bake. I don't know why it's behaving like this now. Did I mess something up in my user preferences? So I'm going to free the bake, and then you'll see basically it's built up out of a Suzanne. Are we? I'm just going to show you the wireframe. Or actually, let's just show you the textured version. So this is just a Suzanne. Nothing. No, not only render. Okay. Nothing special about it. Why can't I see my outline? Oh, because it's not selected, of course. Really nothing special about it. Just subdivided 3 times, and there you go. And there's 2 things on it that make this work. So the first one is the bottom one. I'll start here. It's just a collision. So basically the particles are going to interact with it and collide against it, and that's it. And the other one is a force. So the force here, basically because it's set to surface rather than point, it's going to use the surface as vectors for the force. So if you set it to a positive value, and let's say a particle starts here at the top, it's just going to shoot out towards the top. Or if a particle starts out here, it's going to shoot out here. But the cool thing is, if you set forces to a negative on something like a surface or a force or anything else, it's going to attract the particles. So basically what's happening is the particles get spawned, and let's see if we set this back to wire. There we go. Then, oh, there we go. The particles get spawned from these 3 different systems. And the reason there are 3 different systems is I knew I wanted 3 colors, so I figured, cool, I'm going to do 3 separate systems. So I can just color one red, color one orange, color one blue, and color one white. I don't have to worry about the colors, and because I knew I wanted to cache out the particles to make things go a little bit faster. So the orange ones are in the ears, I believe. The red ones are at the top and the bottom, and in the middle. And the green, or actually, sorry, the red ones are at the top and the bottom, and the blue ones are in the sort of at the eyes and in the middle of the head, just to give it a little bit more interest. So the other stuff that's in the scene are turbulence modifier, or turbulence forces, I guess. But the main thing about them is, yeah, they're offset in space. Doesn't really make that much a difference, but they're animated. So let me turn off the particle system so I can scrub through the I can scrub through the scene a little bit, because otherwise it's going to get really gnarly. So free to bake, there we go, and there we go. So now I should just be able to scroll. There you go. So if I play it now, you'll see these forces are actually animated. And the reason I animate them is if you set your force to have a certain size, then when you animate them, that force field will actually change. And if you want to get really interesting looking particles and have them like make really nice shapes and things like that, the thing is you want to have multiple different size of forces. So I have a big one which is set to about 2. I have a mid one which is set to 1.2, and I have a small one that is set to 0.65. And you can see they also increase in strength as they become the bigger forces. And those 3 things kind of moving around and working together, they'll kind of make it so that the particles break up and move around and do interesting things outside of just getting pushed towards the edges of the mesh with the force on Suzanne here. So I'm going to set this back to bounds, and now we'll see if we can bring down the simulation settings just a touch. So there we go. We're in the middle of the scene. It totally freaks out. And I hope this doesn't destroy my stream performance. I've messed something up. That's really weird. I think I clicked a button somewhere, because my no, that's odd. My shortcut has changed, so something's weird, but that's no big deal. So basically for the 3 different systems, I'm using exactly the same settings. So you can see the particle settings here are just being instanced 3 times. That way I only have to set up the settings once, and all 3 particle systems sort of do the same thing. I respect that. It makes your life a lot easier than having to do stuff the whole time by hand. So I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. So we have, so we had 333,000 particles in each one, so almost 1 million particles. And then here we can see, this is with less of them, but here you can see the forces sort of working in action. Why isn't this one? This one isn't on yet, so there we go. Oh, dude, seriously. It's incredibly annoying. And because I'm using 2.8 as well, I'm just completely forgetting all the shortcuts in 2.7, which is just even worse. But here you can see all of those things together, they work together nicely as you know, as the final effect sort of pops up. If we look at it, then you'll see this one. You'll see how they, you know, because it's more particles, it looks more interesting. So, and there's some extra details layered onto that, which I'll show in a little bit as well. The retiming wasn't done in Blender. I'll show that as well very briefly, but yeah, here you can see the final sort of full effect. And million particles sounds like a lot, but even if it's just for this sort of outer shell, and if you look closely, like there's one little behavior with the particles. If you set them to fluid, there's an edge in here, and they sort of kind of stick to the edges sometimes a little bit, but I don't know. I doubt many people had seen it before I had pointed it out, so it's really not that big a deal. And then these were the extra little shots. So just going through the particle settings, what's the most important? That I'm using fluid rather than Newtonian. Yeah, I mess with the mass a little bit and some of the settings down here, but you can all, you know, try that for yourself. But the reason I'm using the fluid particles is not only do they look cooler, they're also fully multi-threaded. So they're going to use every core in your system. So they're going to be crazy fast. Even at 1 million particles, I think this entire simulation, it was 1,000 frames. This entire simulation took about, okay, on my computer, took about 20 minutes or so to simulate. So even if you just leave something overnight, on most computers you could do 1,000 million particles in like an overnight sim job without too many issues, I think. So then after that, what I did is for each particle system I selected it and I exported it to Alembic. Now Alembic is an awesome format because it can handle changing mesh topology, but also I'm going to select selected objects only. I'm not actually going to export them because I've already done that, and it takes a little while. But what's really interesting as well is it can export hair and particles too, and I'll show you what that looks like when you bring it back in. There we go. So let's import the Alembic cache. Now that being said, 1 million particles, it's a pain in the butt to work with in the viewport, but with an Alembic cache it tends to be quite a bit faster. And the faster the drive is that it's on, the faster the caching and the reading goes, which is really cool. So projects, where are we? Suzanne Awards, 3D, Alembic cache, and there's 6 gigs each. So they do get quite big, but as you can see, I can just scroll through them, which is really awesome. And this is just one of the 3 caches, and it plays real time, which is really, really cool. So this way I could basically just simulate one giant simulation that takes really, really long. So it's 1,000 frames long. And then from there, I can just make all these different shots using the same cache and just moving in the timeline for the different shots. And there's even overlap and stuff. So but you see, if you would try and play this back in Blender just as a particle cache, it would be incredibly hard to do and be very, very slow. But because it's an Alembic cache, it actually goes really quick. Now, you can see those emitters came in as well, but they're a separate object, so you can just delete them. And now, yeah, you've just got this linked cache, and all it is, it's an object that's pulling this in. And you could even override the frame and try and animate it, but it interpolates a bit weird sometimes. So, yeah. So there we go. So that's just one of them. Now to actually get that working and to see those particles, because they're just vertices, so if we render we won't actually see anything. What I do is I build up this really rudimentary screencast keys, where are you? There we go. I build up this really rudimentary particle with modifiers, and I'll show you in a second why. So let's see, I'll just make it this big, and what I'll do is build up solidify 0.1, put it in the middle. So our point is always going to be, our origin is always going to be in the middle. So I make a little cube with this, and then I'll subsurf it, and using 2.8 shortcuts. There we go. And then just smooth it out. Now you might say, why don't you just make a round cube or a UV sphere? Yes, very true. But I'll show you right now why you don't always want to do that is if I parent this, so I'm just parenting the plane to the with the modifiers to the object, and I'm going to use dupliverts, then there you go, bye viewport performance. And the cool thing about this is it's not super fast, I'll admit, but if you're, come on, select the plane, if you turn these off in the viewport, you get a little bit of that performance back. It's not major, but you can actually start working a lot better, and you can do some rudimentary shading as well on those things. So that's why I'll build up particles that I use for dupliverts that way. You'll see this updating camera volume. This is to do with the viewport render. Unfortunately, he has a hard time with that many objects in the viewport. But if we just add in a camera very quickly, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I hit render, just for rendering, it loads them in really fast, and you can see their instances. So we're using very little memory, and it goes crazy fast. And you get a lot more flexibility, and because they're cache files, you're not, because they're single file Alembics, you can stream them in very quickly, you can save them, you can make a copy of them, you can do all kinds of stuff with them, because it just becomes a normal object in Blender that's moving around. So that makes a super quick workflow. Most of the time though, if I'm just looking for shots, what I'll end up doing is just, come on, because you can see it takes a little while, and with the 3 systems it's really slow. But once you turn them off, you can actually preview your shots really easily. So if I open one of the ones that I did, project Suzanne Awards, no, 3D, there we go. Which is an interesting one. Is this the ear? Yeah, there you go. So here you can see the viewport performance is absolutely horrible, but what I can do is I select all 3 of them because there are 3 different ones, so I can color them, and then just alt click none, and if you click alt, it's going to apply the things to all 3 of them, and you can see I can still do real-time shots and stuff. So trying to do that again with particle cache is almost impossible, and this allows you to actually kind of look at what you're doing and get a better shot out really quick, which is really nice. So basically it's the same setup for each shot. I'll give you a very quick look at how the particles are done. There's nothing major in here. All it is a object info with a random output. So what this is going to do is going to give every one of those duplicated instances a value, like a color between black and white. Then you can color ramp the ever-living snot out of it just to get a couple of them, and they got an emission shader. So when you look at the output very quickly, that's exactly what you see, is some of them are just red and some of them have a little bit of emission to them. And that's it. So these scenes are also very light, because if you're going to simulate everything for each scene becomes incredibly heavy, and it's a major pain in the butt. While if you look at my 3D folder here, yes, okay, these caches are 6.5 gigs each. Yes, they're big, but my files are only a couple hundred kilobytes, because all they have is a link to the cache, one duplication object, and some camera stuff. So that really helps, and it makes your saving a lot quicker, auto saving a lot quicker, and it just keeps your production moving faster. So that's one of the reasons why you would use caches. The other ones is if you're working with other artists, then you want to be able to pass stuff on. You can do this with animations, for example. If you have animated characters and you have a pipeline and you're working with multiple people that aren't necessarily in the same place, then yeah, you can pass those on with caches, which is really nice. So these are all the renders. So again, I ended up, oh yeah, this doesn't take the EXRs because they're multi-layer. Let's open this up. There we go. And these are just the raw renders. So that's what they look like. And they haven't been retimed. As I said, I did that separately. I was gonna maybe use the mist for some masking and doing some interesting things, but hey. But all these files are on the Blender cloud, so you can take a look at them, which is really fun. I think I put in the sim file as well, so you can run the simulation for yourself and take a look at it. So then what I ended up was, after rendering them, I comped all of them. There's not that much to the comp either. Okay, there's a little more to it than I thought there was, but let's see. So I'm just bringing in vignettes, always with the vignettes. I don't know, I like them. I like the way Blender handles them. They're just some basic color correction, nothing major. Had a basic little glow, and then had an extra little glare for the twinkles on top, which is hard to see, but a lot of this stuff is very subtle. Then other stuff that I added in is this is basically an ellipse, which has been colored and blurred and then added on top, and you get these really nice gradients. So you can fill up a scene and make it look very full just by adding some gradients in here and there. Obviously you want to try and fake the lighting a little bit. So from here the lighting's hitting it from this side, sort of from the top, so the gradient is sort of coming from the same side. Something similar, there was some backlighting in there as well, so I just added a little bit of blue backlighting in there. And you can see just these little bits really help to sell the effect quite a lot. And a little bit of lens distortion, not much, just a touch, just so you get a little bit of fringing at the end here. And then some grain. So this is a great example of what I was talking about earlier. If I zoom in, we might be able to actually see it. That would be really good. So this is the image just with the lens distortion, and here you can probably see it even with the compression. There's like lines and streaks running through it, and this is color banding, and that's because you're using values that are so, let's see, yeah, I'm trying to show it. Like here you can see a big line. I don't know how visible it is, but it's a very typical thing for CG stuff. You can see it a little bit here as well, and just adding in that little bit of noise, you can see completely disappears. It flattens out, and the noise doesn't even have to be that visible. I think if you zoom in, you can barely see it. I mean, yeah, you can see it a little bit, but I mean, we're super zooming in on something that most people won't even see from that close. Then just in sharpening up to get the individual particles, just to pop a little bit more, and then soften it back down, just to give it that more analog-y feel. Now again, the only things that I maybe did was animate some of these gradients to go up and down just a little bit, just so you get some extra color shifting in the image, and that works really well. It's really just a little bit more interest than what's going on. So the comp is very similar for the other ones, so I'm not going to go through all of them because yeah, all the files are on the cloud, so please just check them out. The caches aren't because they're huge, but you can generate your own and then export it to Alembic if you wanted to. Now the retiming is fun. I found this little thing called slow-mo video, and it's going to generate caches here. So I'll this is the old one, so everything is on GitHub. So here we go. Here's the code. So this, unfortunately, they don't have any binaries for it. So you actually have to build it yourself. If you've never built anything before, it kind of sucks, but once you get used to it, it's actually not that bad, but you just kind of have to suffer through it a little bit. There's a lot of documentation online on how to build stuff. And usually, let's see, they have instructions here. So honestly, I just followed the stuff that they said here, sufficiently recent. So get all of these. This is on Linux, and then yeah, kind of go from there. So, and that worked out quite well. I had maybe one error or something, but it was something to do that I didn't, what was I gonna say? I didn't install all of the dependencies, or something I did wrong. So once you've got it installed though, this is what it looks like, very basic. So you've got an input monitor and a curve monitor. And while this seems really weird at first, it actually makes a lot of sense. So basically you're up, this is the end of your video, and the bottom is the start of your video. And all that you're doing is, if you want the video to not slow down at all, basically what's going on is, this is how long the new video will be. So you can see here at the bottom, you can see I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this is like 10 seconds. So if I wanted the video to be 10 seconds, I could just pull a line from here to here and it would retime to 10 seconds. Now the cool thing is if you start clicking on the curves, right clicking, you can make them linear and Bezier. And if I just scroll through here, you can see this slows down the video a lot and then speeds it back up. So that's pretty sweet. And it's a good little tool. It's very basic. You have to fiddle with the settings a little bit. So if I go into render here, you want the frames per second to be, you can change that as well. I had to mess with this build flow lambda a little bit. Some of them would get artifacts and then you could bring it down a little bit and then it would get a little bit better. So it's trying to figure out like either to fake, like calculate the frames in between or just kind of blend in between them. It's doing a lot of interesting stuff in the back. It has GPU and CPU support, so you could use whatever you wanted, and then you could add in extra motion blur as well, and you could just set it to where you want it to go. So yeah, these files are in there as well. They're just very basic, but it's a cool tool. Yeah, you have to build it and it sucks on most things. I think somebody said, yeah, if you're on Arch, you can get it from the Arch user repository. That's Arch Linux, if you're not familiar with it. But for most people, you just have to build it. So, but it works. I mean, it's free and it works. So again, that hour that I had to spend building it, I don't really see it as kind of a bad thing. So. Let's see, what else is there? So once I'd retime them, yeah, so I would put in the original comp. So this is just at regular speed. And you can see the simulation was actually quite slow. I knew I was gonna, I was looking for retiming stuff, and at that point I knew I was gonna retime things. So I made the shots all quite long. I think they're like 8 or 10 seconds each. And then I just retimed them to whatever I needed them to be. And then in the editing, here you see the retimed version coming from the slow-mo video. And if you look really closely, you can still see a couple of artifacts here and there. If you're just using regular video footage, it tends to work a lot better on regular footage than like this particle stuff is really pushing the limit of what you can do with it. But once I had all of them, I just edited them together. And again, went into Bitwig for the music, which I did myself as well. So here is the edit for the intro, and you can see there's some extra stuff in there. So for the transitions, there's some flashes, and this is something I'd covered in the motion graphics. Just added them in, so these are all these ones, and basically all it is it's in footage here. So I just used my camera and my cell phone flashlight, and went to my bathroom, which doesn't have any windows, closed the door, turned off all the lights, and just kind of like did stuff around the lens. Here you can see I go too far, but all this stuff is useful, so I just sat there for a minute for the first set, and here you can see some of the ones I use. I can flip them around, I can do other stuff, and they're really cool for like extra things. And then once I had the final image and like the final edit, I figured out, oh, some of them need like a blip on this side or need a blip up here or whatever. And I just went in and did a second session in the bathroom. So 2.5 minutes of total work for these two things, but they add just that little bit of extra flair on top. Yeah, that's it. So I don't want the power sequencer thing. Anyway, doesn't matter. And then the music, music is very sort of back and forth. Generally what I'll do is nowadays what I'll do is I'll make an edit, and then I have a little plugin in my music software that allows me to load in the video, and then I can time it to the video of everything. So I think that's that. I'll answer some more questions. If you have some more questions, please type them now, and then I think after that we'll call this one. I don't know if there's anything else I need to show. Went fairly quick, but I hope it was interesting, at least for everybody to take a look at it. So let's see. Yeah, let's just put up a 2.8 screen just for fun. All right. take a drink first. Getting thirsty. Okay. Thanks for making me aware of slow-mo video. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. It's simple, but it works. Not to redo it, just to play it back. Let's see. I love your work. Greetings from Denmark. Greetings from Belgium. Thank you very much. What program do I use to compose music? Do you ever do music for clients as well? Yeah, so I use Bitwig. I think, yeah, Robin mentioned it already in the comments, but I'll just show you the website real quick. I bought it when it came out a couple of years ago, and because it had a pretty nice price and you could just buy it and you owned it. It's a little bit different now. When you buy it, you get a year of support and then own the last version unless you up it, which is kind of a shame. I liked it because it was like a buy once, use it forever type of thing. So I upgraded to the new version recently and it's pretty good. I like it. The only reason I use it on Windows and not on Linux, because it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. That's another one of the reasons why I liked it. Is because some of the commercial synths and things that I use don't have a Linux version. So that's like the only thing stopping me from doing the music on Linux as well, which is a shame. But yeah, someday. I just need to bug them about compiling it for Linux. Maybe they will, I don't know. But yeah, I love it. It's great software. It works. So yeah. But do I do music for clients? It really depends how free they sort of let me be with everything. Sometimes, but it hasn't been all that much. I'd like to move to doing everything myself, just because I like to be in control of everything, and I like it that way. But for now, sometimes. Really depends. So then, what is the best way to learn something like this? Only trying, or are there other tricks? Bit of both, honestly. You gotta just experiment with things and don't look at tools as just what they're supposed to do, but try and think outside of the box. The most fun you can have is to start with like just a plane and subdivide it a bunch of times. And let's say 99 times, so we get 100 segments. And okay, this is obviously 2.8, and just start adding modifiers. So if I'm bored or want to try something out, I'll just kind of look at the modifier stack and go, cool, I haven't used, let's say, ocean yet, and then kind of see what that does. And I mean, just start layering them on top of each other. And I think that for modeling is a lot of fun. And then for other things, yeah, look at some of the stuff that you like. So there's some good tutorials out there. They're not necessarily Blender related. Now the first one obviously is going to be mine here. If you want to learn stuff, my motion graphics one is on here. It's in 2.79, but I go through an entire project and basically show all the different things. Like here's the so this is the project that I made. I didn't model this. This was done by Yuri, but this model was on the Blender Cloud, so I used it to do like an interesting sort of project and do everything involved. So I go through the whole project from start to finish and break it down and sort of show a lot of the tricks. Then other people that I really like to learn from. These are a little bit more expensive. These are paid courses. I'll get to some free stuff as well. Learn Squared. Wow, I totally messed it up. So Learn Squared, they have really, really good courses. These are people that like work in the film industry at like the highest level possible. So this guy, Ash Thorpe, for example. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting things here. So there's a lot of design here, things like that. This UI and data design for film one is really amazing as well. I can definitely recommend it. Motion design here as well. So stuff like this, and you know, YouTube is your best friend, honestly. Let's see some of the people that I like. I don't know how many subscriptions I have that are interesting. So this guy's really cool. Yeah, all the Blender stuff. These are interesting. These are interesting. These are interesting. Most of the Blender stuff. I mean, Gleb stuff as well. These guys are awesome if you want to know more tech stuff. This dude's pretty good for MoGraph. And the thing is, especially, I mean, there's more, but if you want to learn more about MoGraph, just watch MoGraph tutorials. Don't worry about like what application is in or whatever, because there's a lot of just basics and animation involved. So I would honestly watch anything MoGraph related, because you'll find a way, even if the same tool doesn't exist in Blender, there's a way to replicate it probably. And I think you trying to figure that out and figuring stuff out on your own, how to like replicate an effect from a different application. And obviously start simple. Don't look at like some Houdini thing which is completely out there and try and do it in Blender. Like start with the simple things. That's probably the best way to learn it, because you'll start understanding how Blender works as well, and yeah, it'll go pretty quickly. So, and like most of these guys that I mentioned, like Classic Dog Films, he does a lot of photoscan stuff. CG Masters are just good CG Blender stuff in general. Steve does a good job as well. Gleb does a good job as well. These guys are awesome, but they're super nerdy. They're like one of my favorite YouTube channels ever. They're all about technology and computers and how your computer works, and they're pretty Linuxy as well. And then Mount MoGraph has been around for a while. It's cool too. I mean, you've got the other big ones like Grayscale Gorilla. And this is just all MoGraph related. But even some of the basic ones, and I mean, this is all Cinema 4D, but some of the basic ones you could definitely do in Blender and replicate in Blender as well. Come on. Wow, it's taking forever. There we go. But yeah, they're trying to sell you stuff nowadays, but they have tutorials as well. A lot of different things. So yeah. And of course, the main man, Andrew Kramer with Video Copilot. It's probably one of the best MoGraph ones as well. This is all After Effects, but again, it's all about training your eye and trying stuff too. So you can take a lot of things from there. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's a bit lengthy maybe. There's an issue with the link to the comp files on the cloud. Okay, let's see what that could be. We'll fix it live. Come on, art gallery. It's my stuff, Suzanne Awards, compositing files. Ah, yes, indeed. Let us edit that, and which one is it? Looks like it's just uploaded the JPEG. Wow, smart. It's in here. Hopefully I didn't delete everything. Cloud compositing. See if it works. Done. There you go. Fixed. Thank you for letting me know. Do I ever use Python when using Blender? I'm starting to, slowly but surely. It's a little rough, and actually just to make scripts is not too bad. The cool thing with Blender, and I don't know if that's still a thing in 2.8, but it was in 2.7. The interesting thing is if you pull this thing down here, let's say if you make a plane, then this actually gives you the Python command for what happens. So if you have a number of things that like you're doing over and over again, and it's just repetition, then you could easily just make a script with a couple of these things in there, and like the BPY import BPY at the top, so you get all the Python stuff, and it works really quickly, and you can do stuff really easily. It doesn't have a UI or anything, but you can just run it and it works. So you can start there, which is cool. And I'm trying to work on a little script, but it really depends on how much time I have when I'm trying to do it. So Python Bitwig for the win. Yeah, it's awesome. What plugin do you use to sync your video to music? Oh, what was it called? VST video player is really janky, but it worked. Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, VidPlay VST. You can download a free version and it works for like up to 30 seconds, I think. Actually, let's see that on YouTube. So basically you just throw it in there and it just syncs to your timeline in whatever audio application. So you get a little extra window. It is awesome. It works really well. It works on Windows. I don't know if there's a Linux version, but I didn't check. But yeah, I ended up buying it. I don't know how expensive it was. What was it? macOS 64-bit demo version. Oh, $18, so not too bad. Excluding tax though, so it was like 25 euros or something. That's okay. Thanks for sharing. This is really inspiring for me. I like your work and I hope to see you next time. Cool. I'm glad that you liked it. Yeah, I'm glad I could inspire people. You just select the particle simulation from the emitter and export it to Alembic for the 6 GB caches. That's all. Yep, just select the emitter and make sure export particles is on in the bottom. And as long as you don't have any objects in the particles, it's just going to export them as verts. And the reason I do that is to keep the cache size small. And I know 6.5 gigs doesn't seem small, but it can get pretty crazy pretty quickly. So just select it and make sure it's set to selection only in the Alembic. So let's say you were to just make a particle sim and you want to export that. Let's not worry about this top thing over here. Then just select it and export Alembic. And I make sure it's selected objects only. And I'm just going to go to my temp folder and make sure that export particles here at the very bottom is on. Export the Alembic. And now if we hide this and bring it back in, it'll be pretty slow to export with a lot of particles, I've noticed. And now we have it, and here it is. So it's that simple. I have a feeling I missed stuff. By the way, hi Jacob. I saw it before, but I forgot to say hi. And Finn as well, and to everybody I saw at the Blender conference. If you're here, and we met up. It was awesome meeting all of you. It was completely crazy. I had a really, really great time. So thank you for that. What are my favorite add-ons? I'm really boring when it comes to add-ons. I've done this plenty of times. Manuel Bastioni Lab for generating people. So let's just hit that and see what happens. I've been messing with the tissue add-on a little bit as well. Yeah, it generated a whole bunch of stuff. But here you can, set character age and mass and all that kind of thing. And there we go. Now we got a really fat lady. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Some of the other ones are just like utility add-ons, I guess. Like, let's see, the extra objects is really nice because you get all of these extra meshes that you can do, which is really cool. Bolt Factory is fun because you can make bolts and things really easy. Plancher is pretty interesting. It's to make wood floors. Yeah. The Grove is a paid one. It's to make trees. That works really well. I really like that as well if I need trees and other things. I'm just going to scroll through them really quick. Loop tools are great. So then your W menu in edit mode. So there's extra little things here for modeling. I enjoy using those. Tissue is cool. A bunch of people approached me about it at the Blender conference and told me I should use it. So I've been experimenting with it. I haven't really gotten anything cool out of it yet, or nothing worthy anyway. Node Wrangler is awesome to do node stuff in the node editor. Grasswald is a paid one as well, but really like it for quick grass and all that kind of thing. Auto tile size in 2.79 is great for when you're switching between CPU and GPU. Scene City is a paid one, which just got a really big update. Again, yes, it's not the cheapest, but it's basically a nodal like city generator. It's pretty nuts. Like, you can do some cool stuff. So I haven't, it just got updated to use a bunch of nodes and things, and I haven't had time to experiment that much with it, but you can do really big things. Really awesome add-on. Scene City, Blender Cloud stuff, if you have a subscription, is really nice, and Text Tools is really cool too. So let's say you're UVing, what is it, Shift F10. So Text Tools adds a bunch of extra little things. You can bake stuff out as well, but I use them a lot for like aligning UVs and doing interesting things to them. Like this rectify one, obviously it's gonna look weird on this, but you can, error it out, typical. It's probably only meant for an edge. No, okay, well there you go. It's probably, might be an old version. Don't, it's usually a very solid add-on, so I might just be doing something stupid. But yeah, those are some of my favorites, the ones that I use a lot, I guess. All right. Glad you like the music add-on. FL Studio is a built-in video player. Yeah, but I'm using Bitwig, so that's why I needed a separate one. I think Live does it as well, so I think I'm gonna start capping it off here. We're almost at 2 hours again. Good God. Thank you for your stream, extremely enriching chats all week long. Great tips. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad you guys enjoy this stuff. I'm gonna try and do more soon. I think I might, once the 2.8 beta comes out, let me know on like Twitter or whatever if there's interest in me doing a 2.8 stream where I'm just sort of farting around in 2.8 and trying things. I'd be really into that if you want it. So. Another question, loop tools and tissue work in 2.8. Nice, good to know. Thank you. I know loop tools worked. I didn't realize tissue already worked as well. That's encouraging news because I'm having a hard time going back to 2.79 when I'm experimenting. 2.8 has been fun so far. Another question is the effect on the glove from your motion graphics series done with edge split modifier. How do you make the square shapes come together in the glove? Haha, you'll have to watch the video. No, very basically it's an edge split and a smooth, and basically what I do is there's a vertex weight edit modifier in which you can use a texture to change the vertex weight. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using a gradient texture to change the mask of the two modifiers and then move them along. There's a quick tip on my YouTube channel as well, which is using textures with modifiers, which explains that idea of how to use textures with other modifiers. And then it's just a case of using a blend texture, just animating it along. So it was a very quick overview, but if you go to the quick tip on my YouTube channel, that explains the bulk of it. And then it's just the edge split and the smooth, like I showed earlier with the Suzanne head. It's kind of the same idea, I guess. So that's pretty cool. All right. Thank God I managed to catch your stream. I always learn so many cool, neat stuff from you. You're the real MVP. Thank you very much. I try. Yeah, it's been busy lately, and with 2.8 coming up, I didn't do a lot of tutorials and streams because I was kind of hoping for the beta to be a little bit earlier. So that's why it's been quiet. But with 2.8, especially with updating the motion graphics video over the coming months, is going to be, a course is going to be really interesting. So I'm definitely going to get back into it a little bit. What features in 2.8 am I excited about? What aren't I excited about? Honestly, there's so much going on. The UI work is great. There's a lot of like little things that are being fixed that are awesome. The new cloth simulation stuff is awesome. Cycles has gotten so many insane improvements. I don't even know where to start. It's fast. It's got so many new things in it. So I'm excited about that. What else? A lot of modifiers have gotten little bits and bobs, like stupid little things. I mean, obviously I work with modifiers all day, but like things like in the array modifier, for example, you now have UV offsets, which is great. So you don't have to do a bunch of UV tricks like I did with the lights in the beginning. So that's really cool. You know, it's in there. So now you can offset your UVs per thing by default, which makes getting rid of repetition when using textures and things a lot easier in arrays and other things. Then let's see. There's so much. Honestly, there's a lot going on that I'm super stoked about. Obviously, Eevee is freaking awesome. Yeah, it's not a replacement for cycles because people tend to ask that a lot. It's definitely not a replacement for cycles, but I think for NPR type styles and other things, Eevee is going to be kind of a game changer. Even Grease Pencil, I'm super excited about. If I'm honest, I don't know. I might try some drawing or other things. I've seen some interesting stuff done with it. So honestly, there's a lot to be excited about. If I'm, the main thing that I'm really excited about, honestly, now is that people are coming up to me asking me about Blender instead of me telling them about it. So I think it's in a lot of people's minds in the CG industry. I think a lot of people are keeping an eye on it, and stuff like Jama's talk and Captain Disillusion's talk and the guys from Next Gen at the Blender conference. This is really pushing things forward, and I'm seeing a lot of people being very interested in Blender. So that's probably the thing that excites me the most, that I'm going to get to show a lot of people some new things, and I think there's going to be a lot of teaching and stuff in the future as well. So that's cool. Oh, and speaking of teaching, I thought I'd mention this real quick. If you know anybody, blender.org /institute. I think it's here somewhere. Current projects. No. Is it training? Yeah. There is a Blender migration course that I'm doing in December. So if you know other people that are coming from Cinema 4D or 3ds Max or Maya or Modo or something like that, anything non-CAD, so anything that's also in the media and entertainment space, I guess is what you want to call it, then if they're interested, it's not a cheap course. It's about 1,600 euros for a week, which seems like a lot for professional training. It's sort of the thing. They already brought it down a little bit. But yeah, if somebody wants to get into it quickly, I'm just going to go super hard, 5 days, 5 different topics, and you can see it here. Basically, day 1 is like UI and where is everything. Day 2 is sculpting. Day 3 is animation. Day 2 is modeling and sculpting. Day 3 is animation. Day 4 is particles, dynamics, and others. Day 5 is materials, lighting, and all that good stuff. So basically taking them through the entire pipeline in Blender in 5 days. And because they already know stuff, or at least I'm assuming knowledge, it should be really quick and really interesting for the people that want to add it to their tools or switch entirely. So, okay. Thank you all again for the kind words. It's very nice. I'm glad that people are enjoying these. Tissue doesn't work yet. That's okay. I'm sure they'll get to it. Actually, one of the guys that I showed, Alessandro Zamparelli, I think that's his name. On YouTube, he is the guy that created the Tissue add-on, so he's very obsessed with this kind of thing. So I'm sure it'll be pretty cool. All right, last question. Tried Sverchok. Yes, a long time ago, and I found it super confusing, but it's awesome. I see the Blender Sushi guy doing a lot of really cool stuff with it, and maybe at some point I'll get it, but for now, I'm pretty good with where I am, I guess. So yeah, that's that. All right, and stream, thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, it was a good meeting some of you at the Blender conference. It was really awesome, and yeah, see you on the next one. All right, later.